And welcome to episode 3 of Lando's Palace. This is Kahari Mosley here with my co-host, the Mandalorian, Nate Broadus, and Lukman Abdul Salam, and DJ Big Phil will be joining us shortly. Um, and we're really excited about this episode. We're going to do a quick recap of Mandalorian season 2. We are also going to be talking about the book of Boba Fett, as well as the future of Star Wars. With all of the various franchises and products that are out there. So let's just jump right into it with season 2, the Mandalorian. Recap. Obviously, it started off kind of very similar to the way the season ended. It's kind of like the rhythm of the show is kind of like, okay, we're just continuing very old school 1950s style television, very much like Wanted Dead or Alive with Steve McQueen, where you just have these episodes where it's just like show up in town, there's a challenge, completed. Okay, move to the next thing.
Right.
Very much just classic westerns, classic cliffhanger. Serial, kind of entertainment. That's kind of been the foundation of much of great American storytelling and filmmaking. And then the second half, almost kind of like, it was like like a 5 mic hip hop album. It was just like a feature, you know what I mean? Every episode was a feature, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like Boone hit you with Bo Katan, then they hit you with Ahsoka, you know what I'm saying? Then they hit you with Boba Fett, you know what I mean? And then, you know what I mean? They hit you with the ultimate feature, you know what I mean? Like it's like Nas Escobar, verbal intercourse. Ghostface Raekwon, you know what I'm saying? Like, just like, oh man, like it's too much, And so it was just interesting, because we had talked about how we didn't really understand, where it was gonna go. Once you kind of get to the episode, the Jedi, you get to the episode, the Believer, and it's still like, how is this final episode, gonna really come together? And we had, obviously, a lot of people were, theorizing it could possibly be Luke Skywalker who was going to come, Ezra Bridger, and obviously it turned out, to be Luke Skywalker. So, let's just have a quick roundtable discussion on, some of your favorite moments of season 2, your favorite Easter eggs, different things, and then, Big Phil will be joining us, at some point in the next hour.
All right, so I guess if I could open, so one of the ill things I thought about season 2 is that, so a big complaint that I heard from a lot of folks is that there were a bunch of throwaway episodes, or like, episodes that weren't like conducive to the actual plot of the story.
Right.
But it's like one of the things that I think is like one of the things I think we've learned from watching the season is that in Star Wars there is no throwaway content. Right, like,
Right.
And that's one of the things that I think they made super dope in this season is like, yo, everything's relevant to something. Especially like whenever we started seeing all the features, or like, yo, this is relevant to like, we've talked about this before, but now this 30-minute series that I'm watching in 2020 is relevant to these, moments that I've experienced in Star Wars over the last, 34 years of my life. You know what I mean? So like, it's really interesting. My favorite moment of this season, period, was Bill Burr. Like, yo, he, like, from the moment he came on the screen, I was like, all right, I know who that guy is. That's Bill Burr. And I had an expectation of what I thought I might get from Bill Burr on screen. And he kind of blew a lot of that away. And I thought that like he gave us some of the most like tense moments, period, during that season of like, I think Phil complained in the past, like, you never really feel like Mando's in danger. You don't really feel like,
Right.
you always feel like they're going to accomplish their goal. When Bill Burr's on screen, you're kind of just like, yo, what's about to happen? I don't really know what he's about to do. And I thought that was a really interesting way of kind of like shaking everything up, So.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Luke Vaughn, man,
Nah,
we'll
man.
go around it, a couple times, because it was just so much, to
Yeah,
draw
man.
from.
Yeah, I'm overwhelmed by season 2. I think definitely season 2. You're right, Kahari. The first part of season 2 kind of followed season 1, in a sense, as far as these daily missions or tasks. But right in the middle of season 2, it became like cliffhanger every week. I think that the thing about that really, 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 really impresses me is that there's continuity with all the episodes, even though you have these different directors. Now, obviously, it's the same writers. Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni are writing most of the episodes, but there's different directors, and it keeps the same vibe going. Each chapter has its own unique appeal to it, but there's a theme that's connected with all the chapters, with all the directors, which makes it amazing that all the directors have the same vision. I think my favorite moment of the season was obviously the Ahsoka episode. I think that episode, just my personal favorite. Yeah, as Ahsoka as her character, and just that whole episode was just like a whole delve into the Force without talking about it. Usually in previous episodes, whether it's Star Wars movies or cartoons or comics, when the Force is talked about, it's explained. We have a episode about the Force. Well, this episode with Ahsoka and Grogu, it was like the Force wasn't explained; it was just felt. And there was a lot of scenes. It was like a silent film, man. It felt like a silent film. There was a lot of scenes where there was no dialogue. It was really, really open, really spacious. And that was one of my favorite scenes, and one of my favorite moments is when they met and they were communicating and there was no dialogue. And the full moon was there. I mean, yo, man, Dave Filoni did his thing on that one as far as directing and writing it, man. So that, there's so much more, but, and the Boba Fett one too, the Boba Fett episode, probably by the Boba Fett fight and the Ahsoka scene with Drogue is probably my two favorites. I can't really, one's not above the other.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think as far as favorite moments of the season, I think my favorite moment is, is just that line, man. I would love to, catch up to, Favreau, and Filoni, at a Star Wars celebration. But it's like, man, who wrote, that line, sometimes fate, comes to rescue the wretched. I mean, that's just, you know what I mean? That's just one of the, to me, that's one of the illest Star Wars lines ever. You know what I mean? Like, and it really, I think made, Boba Fett like that much iller, of a character. And I think like even lines like that kind of sets the format, you know what I mean, for, the book of Boba Fett, which we'll talk about, in a little bit. But you mentioned, that, the fight scene, with Boba Fett and Tim Morrison, and, and he actually incorporated some of his native Maori, Pacific Islander, Asian Pacific Islander background, and some of those moves were part of, like, if you ever watched like Australian and New Zealand rugby, and before the games, they do the chanting and the stomping, you know what I mean? The Asian Pacific Islander brothers do that. He was incorporating some of those moves. If you look at it again, it's some of those same moves, that they do with like the stomping and the hollering and all that stuff, the chanting, you know what I mean? He drew that from his native culture, you know what I mean? Which was, which was powerful. He was really, that was part of like the physical martial arts choreography, of the scene, the tragedy. Yeah, I mean, the scene in, that episode, the tragedy, you know what I mean? That, and there's another line that I really, thought was real cool, was in the episode 9, the first episode of season 2 with Cobb Vanth, and he talks about how, he was wandering the desert and he ran into the Jawas, and he said sometimes both suns shine on a womp rat's tail. You know what I mean? It's just little stuff like that. You know what I mean? It just sounds so right, that draws from, real, English language, little phraseologies and things like that, and how they, reincorporate it, into the Star Wars universe. It's just, just little stuff like that. But, let's open it back up. Like, Nate, this is some other things that really stood out in season 2 for you, that you want to share.
Yeah, just to piggyback on what you just said though, Kahari, like that's one of the things I appreciate about science fiction, period. And that I think like good science fiction does is like, you know, it puts you in this other space and kind of exposes you to these other cultures that don't exist and are like super foreign. So like the quotes you were able to give from these foreign cultures, like stuff that, you know, George Lucas, Dave Filoni, you know, John Favreau over the years, different writers over the years have come up with. It's just a really incredible way that they've been able to connect us with these cultures that don't actually exist as far as we know, don't actually exist anywhere in the universe. And like, yeah, I thought that was really cool too. So I appreciate you bringing that up. As far as the other big moments, man, I mean, the biggest moment in the season, period, was when your boy popped up at the end. You know what I'm saying? Like that for me was like, yo, like, you know, I was giving Big Phil a hard time about it a little bit last week, but like whenever you saw that and you're like, yo, this is what I really wanted to see Luke Skywalker doing this whole time. You know what I mean? Like they finally got the perfect intersection of technology, the choreography, and the writing. You know what I mean? The writer with the intent to really make this role look crazy. And you know, like I thought they executed that so flawlessly, man. And like that had to be like my, you know, 1A favorite moment.
Right. Luke Mon?
No, man, definitely, man. I mean, you know, just to go back on the Bill Murray episode, I think because I skipped the last 5 episodes, man. I mean, I think the last 5 episodes probably some of the best Star Wars content. I'm not being hyperbole. They're probably about some of the best Star Wars content ever. You know what I mean? Just the last 4 or 5 episodes, picking which one you think is best. I mean, all over. And I think the Bill Murray episode, The Believer, you know what I'm saying, where Bill Murray was in. I think the writing in that episode was so strong in the dialogue, and that scene where they're in the mess hall was probably one of the most suspenseful scenes. It took me back to when Han Solo was on the deck getting ready to be frozen. You know what I'm saying? Like
right.
that whole suspense, like what's about to happen next. You know what I'm saying? Like what's going to happen? Like it took me back to Empire Strikes Back. And as far as the last, you know, obviously, I mean, you can't be a Star Wars head and be like, look, yo, Luke Skywalker come on screen, like prime Luke. That's not the most, you know, craziest thing. I mean, I think after that episode, my mouth was open for about a half an hour. You know what I mean? I couldn't close it. You know what I mean? I was so excited. The way they did it, the build up, just even everything about that scene, you know, just the suspense, you know, first the ship lands. Who is it? Oh, it's probably Luke. Wait, he's on the first he's coming in the ship, and all we're seeing is from the perspective of the video, right? The video monitors, you know what I mean? So we're seeing him catch wreck from the video monitors. Then eventually he gets on the elevator and it stops. It's suspenseful. Then it gets up on the floor, ding, and he comes out and this catches mad wreck. That scene, the way they built it up was incredible. The music, Droku touching the screen, feeling the force. You know what I mean? It was just like, whoa, the way Droku looked at Din Djarin at the end, you know what I'm saying? And this is another thing I wanted to bring up and see what y'all thought of. I would like to ask Dave Filoni and John Favreau, like, what inspiration did they get from, what animal did they take for Droku? You know what I mean? Because being with cats, I like live with cats most of my life. I have a cat now. And I thought Droku communicated like a cat. You know what I'm saying? The way his eyes, the way he communicated with people, you know what I mean, was like how a cat communicates with people, you know what I mean? And I just know that living with a cat. And I just wonder what y'all thought about that as well, as a side note, you know?
Yeah. That's an interesting point. You know, obviously, you know, Grogu is based upon, you know, very obviously Yoda. You know, there's 3 known characters of that species, which is yet to be described. You know what I mean? You know, we got Quarren, you know, and the Mon Calamari, and you know, we got, you know, so many different species, but we do not know, you know, what that species is. But Yoda, there's also Yaddle, which was a female member of the species that, you know, that was, you know, seen in the prequels. And now you have, you know, Grogu, you know, and obviously Yoda and Grogu are puppets. You know what I mean? The vast majority of what you see, other than in the prequels, I think there was some CGI involved, if I'm not mistaken. We can check on that. But primarily, you know, Yoda has always been a puppet, you know, and Grogu is a puppet. And, you know, there's some really dope scenes in the Star Wars gallery, you know, behind the scenes of The Mandalorian, where Deborah Chow directs the season 1 episode, The Client, with Werner Herzog. And they say there's a certain point where everybody started to forget that Grogu was a puppet and thought Grogu was a living like creature. So there was a certain point where Werner Herzog starts to direct the puppet, and he's talking directly to the puppet, like the puppet is like a living
Right.
being, like he totally, you know what I'm saying?
Immersive.
He totally, you know what I mean? And Deborah Chow's like trying to direct him, and he's trying to direct the puppet, like you know, like a child, just do this and this, and it's like, yo, it's a puppet. It's not a real thing, but it came to life on the set. You know what I'm saying? But it's just shout out to the puppeteers, you know, which is, you know, something that I did want to mention, that I talked to actually one of my homies, Dr. Biko Baker out in Milwaukee, you know, who's a big Star Wars fan, and you know, and you know, I remember we saw Revenge of the Sith together, actually in New York City. You know, when Revenge of the Sith came out. You know, we were talking about how, you know, really one of the dope things, you know, about Star Wars, you know, is this intersection, you know, of writing, you know, visual arts, you know, sound, music, you know what I'm saying, you know, culture, you know what I'm saying, and tech, you know what I'm saying. So when you check the behind the scenes stuff, and it's so much focus on the characters, you know what I'm saying, on the presentation, that there's like sculptors, you know what I'm saying, there's engineers, you know what I'm saying, there's tech cats, you know what I'm saying. It's like yeah, Darth Vader is ill, but it's like those are like drawings that like Ralph McQuarrie did, and now they have cats that's doing those drawings, that those are like, without cats who can draw, like none of this comes alive. So it's such an intersection of so many different disciplines and interests, you know what I'm saying. And that's part of, to me, what makes it so dope, and what makes it kind of different from a lot of the other stuff, and pretty much everything that's out there. Because even like, you know, Star Trek, you know, really doesn't take it to the level, you know, of Star Wars, you know, where they're like, you know, even me and my wife, you know, we're checking out some of the behind the scenes stuff. She's like, oh, that's cool. Because they had some of the mechanical engineers and sculptors, you know, because the writers come to them with ideas, and they go into the laboratory and they build, you know what I mean? They show how they built like the actual arena on Tatooine, where they did the pod racing in episode 1. You know what I mean? It's like a room size arena that they built. You know what I mean? Like it's built like maybe 1/50th of scale. You know what I mean? Like something crazy, but it's like it's like having like a toy size joint, but the size of a whole room. You know what I mean? So it's like the levels of the various skills associated with pulling this off, you know what I mean, is not, you know what I mean, to be overlooked. And they all are part of it. That's what makes it so dope. You know what I mean? Particularly the behind the scenes stuff, because you really get to see from like the sound engineers, the cats who made the Wookiee sounds. And those are cats going into the lab for months, playing around with like, I know when they made the Chewbacca voice, it's like part wolf, part dog, part tiger, and he's like basically like the RZA Primo. He's just mixing all the sound together to get to the right sound that doesn't sound like any of them. It sounds different enough that it's not like, oh, that's a dog, but still familiar enough that it's not something that you can't wrap your head around, which is like ill. You know what I mean?
Hey, Kahari, so before we get too far away from it, because I'll forget. I know you mentioned the Yoda being a puppet originally. Was Jim Henson who originally did the original puppeteering for? So
and Frank Oz.
It was both of them, right?
I believe. I know it was Frank Oz for sure.
I think it was Frank Oz. Frank Oz did it.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't want to misquote anybody. I don't want to misquote anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, but because I know they were both doing great puppeteering things. I think Jim was a few years later. Frank Oz, man, in that first series did such an amazing job with those puppets that I say that I think that for most of us, you know, when we first watched it, I watched it much later, probably in the early 90s than you guys did. You know, when I first saw that, I personally thought that all that stuff was real. You know what I mean?
Right.
The illest thing. But another thing I wanted to say, Lukey, to piggyback on.
Yeah. Shout out to my man Chuck May in the comments. He said Frank Oz did the voice, Henson did the puppeteering.
Right.
Okay, all right, cool. So I appreciate that, Chuck. So Jim Henson, man, like I was watching a show the other day on Amazon Prime, Farscape, from like the early 2000s, right? Super campy, terrible science fiction show from the early days of the Sci-Fi Channel. But Jim Henson did all the puppeteering on that as well. You know what I mean? And that was like, maybe 30 years later. And it was really amazing to see that on that show, like the puppeteering still stands up as a medium of like, making these creatures that are different than anything we could comprehend, you know what I mean, from our planet, come alive. And I thought that it was really amazing. And I really hope I hope both those dudes get all the flowers in the world. But Lukey, I wanted to piggyback on what you were talking about the tension in the Bill Burr scene, right? And I would say that a lot of folks are probably not used to feeling tension as it relates to Star Wars, because for much of the Star Wars stuff, like it's been out for years and years and years. We've seen it so many times, right? So like, you almost don't appreciate that tension in that Han Solo Empire scene. But a lot of folks, if you remember back to how you felt when you first watched it, the whole time I thought Han Solo was gonna escape. You know what I mean? So like it was so tense watching it, and then the movie ends, and it's just like, yo, he didn't escape.
Right.
Yo, like what's going on here? You know what I mean? And so like, yeah, I thought that really like belayed that tension that I felt in that Bill Burr scene to me, and I thought that they were just really well related. And that depth charge sound that Mr. Mosley's talking about. Yeah, that's a great sound too.
No, man, I think one thing I wanted to also add was just the character development, throughout season 2, and Din Djarin's character. I mean, in season 1, primarily the first 3 or 4 episodes, he didn't say a word. You know what I'm saying? Or barely said a word in season 1. And in you progress in season 1, you kind of see him come out a little bit more. But this season, obviously, he took his helmet off a little bit more in the second half. He spoke a lot more. There was a lot more interaction between him and Grogu, and I think you really saw his character development. And it's kind of similar. It's a similar character arc to the Luke Skywalker character arc in the first 3 movies. You know what I mean? As far as this person who's a hero, but really he's like, I don't really want to be a hero, anti-hero kind of guy, you know what I mean? And kind of stumbling upon this path, but it's really the one, you know what I'm saying? And like kind of how Luke is, in the first Star Wars, you don't really know this farm boy, what he is, until eventually after the 3rd movie, it's like, oh, he's a Jedi Knight. Well, I think now we're kind of seeing Din Djarin's character develop, and hopefully going into season 3 or going into the book of Boba Fett, obviously there are going to be tie-ins, and going into season 3, you're going to see a little bit more. But I think the way they developed this character over this season 2 was excellent. You know what I mean? And a lot of that goes to Jon Favreau, who wrote most of the episodes. Dave Filoni, I think, wrote 1. But they obviously partner up and consult all the time. So them 2 dudes, man, the way they develop his character, Din Djarin's character, is excellent. And moving forward, I think that's something that's exciting to see his development. Is he going to be the one that's going to bring Mandalore back? You know what I mean? Is it really the reason? Is because he's the one. Bo-Katan really realized that. You know what I mean? When he came into the room with the dark sword, she saw, oh, he's really the one. That's why she ain't take the sword, so on and so forth. So that's a cliffhanger going into season 3. But I just kind of wanted to bring that up.
Right. Yeah. And I did want to say something real quick.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
And I just want to say something real quick about the puppeteers as well. I know for Grogu, I think it's 3 different puppeteers. I think one controls the extremities. I think one controls the head, and then the other one controls the eyes. So, and I know in season 1 of Star Wars Gallery, they actually talk to the puppeteers, all 3 of them, and they have to have a rhythm. You know what I mean? And like when Grogu's walking over to R2, you know what I mean? That's 3. Like one person's controlling the walking, the one person's controlling the head movements, and the other person's controlling the eye movements, and they have to be in rhythm. That the head's turning the right way, the eyes is turning the right way, so that It looks real. So would be interesting to understand from them as far as anatomically, you know, what animals and movements that they're drawing from besides humans. You know what I'm saying?
I mean,
you know, when they're doing that. But I just wanted to throw that in because we're talking about, you know, the puppetry.
No, I was just saying, man. Go ahead, Nick.
Yeah.
Oh man, I lost it.
Oh no, I'm sure you'll get it back. Yeah, but you know,
no, actually, I got it. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I was gonna say that I was wondering, you guys' opinion, if you know, Mando's helmet coming off a lot more this season was related to Pedro Pascal's, you know, his star expanding a lot over the past year. He was in 2 movies that dropped Christmas Day.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, dude's getting bread right
I mean,
now.
but Pedro was already cool, man. He was already, you know what I'm saying? He's already in a movie. He was in Equalizer 2, you know what I'm saying? He had a main with Denzel. I mean, he's been in movies, man. He's been, you know what I'm saying? Right. He already was a star before he became Mandalorian. But I feel you. I mean, there was rumors saying that he wanted to take his helmet off more.
I was curious if you guys gave any credence to that.
Nah, you know, yeah.
Definitely rumors that were out there, you know, circulating. It was rumors that he actually left. You know, I saw some stuff that said, you know, he had actually left, you know, the set, you know, mid-season, and they was just like all body doubles, you know what I'm saying? You know, the rest of the way. But, you know, he seems, you know, to be excited. I mean, every episode that was dropping, he was on Twitter, you know what I mean? You know, but talking about writing, you know, I do want to give a shout out to Rick Famuyiwa, you know what I mean, who actually is the only other writer, you know what I mean? It's been Filoni, it's been Favreau, and Rick Famuyiwa is the only other writer, you know what I mean? He wrote his episodes. He wrote The Prisoner, you know, and he wrote The Believer, you know what I'm saying?
The Bill Murray episode. The Bill Murray episode is Believer.
Yeah,
right.
He did both episodes with Bill Burr in it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He wrote, you know what I mean? He wrote, you know, both of those episodes too, you know what I'm saying? So, you know, shouts out to him, you know what I mean? And yeah, I mean, there definitely is, you know, a whole number of questions out there, you know, who's the true Mandalore? You know, is it, you know, how can Bo-Katan, you know, claim Mandalore, you know, but, you know, again, like I said last week, you know, Dan did say, so you can have whatever you want, man. The kid's my only priority. You know what I mean? But there's also a feeling that, you know, Bo-Katan, you know, didn't win it the last time she got it and lost it. So now there's a Star Wars theory out there right now that's saying, you know, that she could take it, but she feels if she takes it, then she might lose it again. You know what I mean? Because she shouldn't have took it the last time because she didn't win it in battle. You know what I'm saying? She was gifted it. You know what I mean? So I think there may be some superstition, you know, associated with that. You know, that's one thing that I read. You know what I mean?
Right. I mean, you know, I obviously watched the Star Wars Rebels episode where she took the sword. It was kind of done differently though, and you can see why there's some gray area on why she took it then in the Star Wars Rebels episode, and she didn't take it in this episode. But I wanted to add about Pedro and about just his overall acting ability, man. I think he kills it, man. I think he's an incredible actor. I think the act with a puppet, right? To act without, I mean, he acts without words. He acts, you know, with physical features, with movements, with motion, without even moving sometimes. And I think he's an incredible performer. And I think that this whole performance that he's doing as the Mandalorian is like incredible from an acting perspective. Not having to say many words or what have you. And I think the fact that he doesn't show his face a lot, I mean, I think that to me, it's more props to him as an actor and as a performer. And I think moving forward, he should get even more roles and so on and so forth based on his performance in this Mandalorian, you know, in these 2 seasons. That's just from my opinion, you know, just as an actor. Yeah.
I agree. Like at the end of what's the second to last episode, whenever he's like,
Believer.
I'm coming for the child. He's more important to kill everybody in your whole family, blah, blah, blah. He has the helmet on. He's speaking like this over the intercom, but you felt all of that. Though.
Yeah.
I'm holding the baby back, bro. Like he's coming. He did an amazing job. And just to and we could put this to bed, but one of the other movies he was in that dropped on Christmas was this new Spy Kids movie that came out, right? Spy Kids like it's super campy, it's super like cheesy, but it's a great kids series. but like he's like the lead in it, and it's just like he's playing a completely different role. He's playing a badass, but it's like a completely different role with completely different motivations and intentions. And it's like it feels so much different, but he feels like he's just the right guy. You know what I mean? Like yeah, I think he's really done a great job, man. I think that his Star is continuing to expand. You know, whether he made that decision of taking his helmet off for that, you know what I mean, or other reasons, man. I just think that Pedro was really the guy for the job.
No,
you know what I mean?
no, man. I mean, I think he killed it in Equalizer too, man. I mean, going up against Denzel, man. You know what I mean, he was an incredible villain in Equalizer 2, for those who ain't see it, you know what I'm saying? But Equalizer 2, he kills it. So yeah, man, he's the man.
Right. Yeah, I think there's a couple, definitely, things you could look at, as far as, the Pedro Pascal, performance. What I thought was interesting, and I watched some stuff that talked about it, was his body movements even after he took off the helmet. If you notice, when they were in the mess hall, he was still moving his head,
right,
as if somebody with the helmet on that lacked peripheral vision. You know what I mean? Because he's so accustomed, to having to move his head much, further, because the lack of the peripheral vision, that the helmet, creates. You know what I mean? And then I think another interesting thing about his role is a lot of what he's doing is voice acting. Like if you check out the behind the scenes, anytime he's coming through the helmet, that's just voice acting. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And he'll I'm sure he speaks the same lines as he's in the helmet.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what I mean? But he's delivering all the lines from the helmet. Mm-hmm. They're in a studio. Filoni and Favreau are sitting in the back.
Right.
Like P. Diddy and DJ Premier, and he's just up at the mic sitting, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Deliver like, I can bring you in hot or bring you in cold.
Right,
and all that is voice acting, like it's animation. So it's like combining voice acting and then having to then do it physically and combining all that, you know what I mean? That's wild, you know what I mean? That you know what I mean? That he's able to deliver, his role, where it's part voice acting, part just physical, acting. It's ill. They showed the body actor who does Frog Lady. It was the same body actor that did Quill. Even though Nick Nolte did the voice of Quill, it's a woman who's a body actor. You know what I mean? And that's the other thing. It's just this combination of all these different artists. You know what I'm saying? That make it what it is. It has to be like this. Wu-Tang Clan, Symphony, Marley Marl, like all the illest artists. You know what I'm saying? And just to get to the Frog Lady, Peyton Reed did that episode, The Passengers. And he talks about, the vast majority, like trying to direct that episode. He's like, the vast majority of the episode is a person in a mask, a frog lady, and a puppet. And he was like, as a director, he was like, let's do this. He was so amped about it because he was a big Star Wars fan. You know what I'm saying? But it's just like that level of
yo.
You know what I mean? It's just like, it's like ill. You know what I'm saying?
No doubt. Yeah, you froze. Nah, man. You brought up Kari, but you brought up the mess hall scene. That was incredible, man. That man, that just made me think. I mean, how Mando, how Din Djarin was acting in that scene with his helmet off because he didn't want to have his helmet off. So the whole time you could feel it, like he doesn't want to have his helmet off. Like he was moving, like you said, like he had his helmet on, or he was moving like he was naked, like he didn't have no clothes on, but he had clothes. Right. But he was like, the way he was moving was like, oh man, I don't have no clothes on. He just didn't have a helmet on. And it was so crazy how he pulled that off. I think that was an excellent scene as far as the subplot of that scene. It's probably one of the best scenes, of one of the best scenes of the entire series. I mean, so far, I think, with just him involved in that. I just kind of wanted to bring that up.
Absolutely.
I can't remember the name. Imperial officer
right.
Scene, if you guys could
was he it would seem like he was new. Was he a recurring?
Yeah. I think his name was like Van S, but he was actually a character he also played in Game of Thrones, I believe.
Right.
Okay. So what was ill to me was the lines that he was delivering to Lando. Because he was talking that stuff.
He was talking greasy, yo. He was talking real greasy.
Yes, you and all your mans out there to die, and guess what? 10,000 more. We gonna do it again.
Right.
Like, yo, that scene was so crazy to me. I'm like, yo, like, first of all, this is the culture. First of all, I'm getting like, this is the culture within the Empire, right? Like, yo, you got to be down to die. You know what I'm saying? Your leaders got to be down to sacrifice you. You know what I'm saying? Like all this other stuff. And then, like, you know, if you're a frontline soldier in the Empire, like, how do you really feel about this? I feel like a lot of that, you know, did a good job of connecting to The Force Awakens, Finn. You know what I mean? When he's trying to break away from the Empire, you know, you know what I mean? Like, I'm sure that, you know, there's a lot of that you know, there's a lot of that, words escaping me, but there's a lot of that within the ranks of the Empire where, you know, people are dissatisfied with their command. And I thought that was a really interesting way of, you know, depicting all that.
Well, George Lucas, you know, inspired from the first Imperial officers, was inspired by like Nazi Germany, you know what I mean, in the first movies. And so they kept that same kind of vibe, obviously, throughout all the Star Wars lore, all the movies and all is that original Nazi Germany type of vibe, you know what I mean? From that George was inspired by from World War II, because he put a lot of World War II stuff in the first Star Wars movie, you know.
All the dogfights,
exactly.
Based, like cut for cut from a World War II movie.
Right. So
in the old movies, 100% of the Imperial officers were white men, right?
Yes, pretty.
Yeah. That's how I always thought. It was like the Empire is like all the old white dudes, everyone else, aliens and everything else.
So I brought that up though, Nate, because, you know, a lot of in Nazi Germany, there were a lot of detractors. You know what I mean? If you study World War II history and what have you, you know, there was a lot of cats that wasn't feeling Hitler. You know what I'm saying? In the army, you know what I mean? That would do certain things, and that would kind of be in, you know, that would kind of how can I put it? Like, that would do things that would kind of deter what the army was doing in Germany, you know what I'm saying, to kind of block them, you know what I mean? So a lot of that stuff is kind of real, as far as, you know, people not really feeling being in the army, and you as well, you know what I mean, being in the army, you know that happens. So I think that a lot of that is real, man. A lot of that is kind of really real talk, you know.
Right. And actually, Chuck May in the comments, shouts out to Chuck May, shouts out to my brother Neri, mostly in the comments too. I was going to say the same thing. The speech in Force Awakens, you know, it was, you know, I mean, it was clearly modeled, you know, off the speeches that Hitler gave, you know, in the 1930s, particularly, you know, the big stadium scene, the way everything was set up. It was set up directly like the way, the Nazi Party, you know what I mean, rallies and stuff, you know, in the late 1930s, you know, and he's, you know, they're drawn, you know, from all that, you know, and that's why, you know, I think it's a perfect time to, segue to the book of Boba Fett. You know, what makes me so excited, you know what I mean? Because there's a part in the Disney Gallery where Jon Favreau is directing John Leguizamo's character from episode 9, you know, the first episode of season 2, where Mando goes into the kind of the fight club, you know, and then John Leguizamo's character, you know, tries to set him up. So Jon Favreau's kind of directing John, and then also again it's voice acting, you know what I mean, because they both have masks on and prosthetics, you know what I mean, they're both in costumes, you know, when they play the scene out. So they're, you know, practicing the scene. Pedro Pascal and John Leguizamo are sitting next to each other, and Leguizamo kind of, you know, says the line where it's like, oh, be patient, you know, it's impolite to, you know, just talk to go right to business, you know what I mean? And then Favreau's like, no, I want you to live it more gangster, you know what I mean? Like, this is going to be our gangster episode. So he's like, I want Don Corleone, you know what I mean? Like, it's not polite to start business immediately, you know what I mean? Like, you know, Favreau is like, you know what I mean? So I'm like, so when I saw that, you know, the other day, that was on the new episode, I'm like, yo, that's what the book of Boba Fett. It's good, you know, we had already talked about it being more gangster, you know what I mean? And Jon Favreau talks about delving in and out of the genres, you know what I mean? And you know, and saying like, you know, he wanted to do a gangster episode, and that was, you know, that episode, you know, and John Leguizamo's character, was like a gangster, was like a mobster, you know what I mean? He's like, I want you to deliver it like Don Corleone. He's like, not, and kind of give you a sneak preview of how they're going to dip, more into, because you look at Rangers of the New Republic, and like we talked about, that looks like that's going to be like, Elliot Ness, the Untouchables,
yeah, right.
Like them 60s and 70s crime sagas, the streets of San Francisco, you know what I mean? Mike Hammer, you know what I mean? Mickey Spillane, Mike Hammer type of stuff, where they're going hunting down, the Imperials, you know what I mean? Almost like a cop, type of genre, you know what I mean? That gritty, 70s, you know what I mean?
Right.
Real
Starsky and
life.
Hutch. Starsky and Hutch.
Yeah, you know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? I think it's gonna have that, kind of feel. You got the Book of Boba Fett, it's your gangster stuff. You got Robert Rodriguez, you know what I'm saying? So it has a kind of like part Godfather, part Narcos, South American drug lords,
right?
Slash meets Italian gangsters, you know what I mean? Probably meets, East Asian mafia, you know what I mean? Stuff like John Woo, you know what I mean? Like the John Woo, a lot of those films were gangster films as well, you know what I'm saying? So I think they're probably gonna, draw from that, kind of thing. And then I think Ahsoka will also, we know Ahsoka's gonna be a miniseries. So I think it's gonna be like Obi-Wan. It's probably gonna be like 6 episodes. So that's probably gonna be more of your classic Space Odyssey, her, going to get Thrawn, and probably more into the typical, Star Wars place. But, it's all, again, I think it's been more confirmed now that it is going to culminate, one finale of all 4 series, The Mandalorian, The Book of Boba Fett, Rangers of the New Republic, and Ahsoka. So all 4 of them are going to culminate in one episode at some point in the next couple of years. Because, The Mandalorian, pre-production starts immediately after Boba Fett drops. You know what I mean? So there's no Mandalorian for for next year. It's going to be the following year. You will get Mandalorian season 3, and probably Ahsoka and the first Rangers of the New Republic will start dropping 2022.
So Bad Batch is coming too. The cartoon.
Yeah, the Bad Batch. Yeah,
so they're going to drop that,
series.
And that's going to lead in. There's going to be some lead in to the other episodes as well.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying with that. Yeah.
Right.
Go ahead,
right.
Nate. My fault.
No, I was just, and this is a little bit off topic, so I didn't want to interrupt. But they had the Fight Club scene on it from episode 9. And one thing I thought when I watched that is, obviously George Lucas and all the people around Star Wars obviously think nightclubs are incredibly dangerous places, right? The Fight Club, any cantina scene, any scene where they're in like a coffee shop or a bar or anything in Star Wars, bodies are going to start dropping. And I just I thought it's so funny. It's so consistent too. But yeah, I wanted to say that. I just always thought that was hilarious.
For those Clone War heads out there that knows about Clone Wars, I hope they bring back.
That's Chuck and Neri in the comments.
Yo, Neri. I hope they bring back Bane. Y'all know what I'm talking about. I hope they bring back Bane, one of the illest bounty hunters in Clone Wars. Hope they bring him back for the Boba Fett series. There's like serious rumors that there's going to be a live action Bane character. For those who don't know about Bane, Bane is one of the illest bounty hunters that debuted in the Clone Wars animated series. Just to add on to what Kahari was saying about the Ahsoka series, some of the stuff I came across is that Dave Filoni's writing that, man. You know what I mean?
Yep. So
he's going to go deep into the Force show. They're going to like delve into like really supernatural, spiritual, the Force, kind of like what Star Wars Rebels was at the end of Star Wars Rebels, when they went into the other world. That's kind of what I'm hearing with the Ahsoka series, and that there may be some interplay between Luke and Ahsoka as well, and that Ezra, the Jedi from the Star Wars Rebels cartoon series, is going to be adjoining the Ahsoka series as well. To stay on the cartoons, there's a cartoon series, and I think I brought this up this week. There's a series in the Clone Wars, a Darth Maul series. There's a 3-episode series where Darth Maul takes over the underworld. Him and Savage, right? Him and his brother, they take over the underworld. And not to go into it, but there's 3 episodes where they're like going to this gangster, going to this crew, and basically just wiping them out and getting them all under under his leadership. And then they go to Mandalorian and they take over Mandalore, right? Looking at that episode, I was watching a little bit of that this week. I think that they're going to draw some inspiration from that as far as the underworld characters.
Right.
With Boba Fett, because there's a lot of that in the Outer Rim. And you got to realize now that the Empire has been kind of fractured, right? Now that the Empire is fractured, the Outer Rim stuff and that gangster stuff's off the hook now. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And so there's a lot of stuff going on out there.
So
go ahead,
yeah, we'll jump to Dave, but that brings up an interesting point. So I'll see if I can find it and drop it in the comments. But I know recently there's been more. If you notice over the last 72 hours almost, there's been a lot more leaks about I think in the triumph of what was episode 16, the triumph that was season 2 of The Mandalorian, and this kind of Jedi Master role that George Lucas has played, for Filoni and Favreau, more than any other, project, since, the prequels.
Right.
George Lucas has been more involved, in The Mandalorian, not really in a hands-on way, but almost like kind of like when the head coach becomes a GM, then becomes like, special assistant to the general manager. You know what I mean? He's kind of like special assistant for, Star Wars operations. And he kind of, he was there when they shot the final scene with Mark Hamill. He was on the set for that. You know what I mean? So I think it's going to be interesting because, and I bring all that up because that was actually going to be the sequel trilogy. The sequel trilogy was supposed to be Darth Maul takes over the underworld. That's what George Lucas was going to do. That was the idea that he said, like that Darth Maul comes back, and Luke is going doing the Jedi stuff, and Leia has to bring the galaxy back together. And it's not, necessarily the Empire they're fighting. They're fighting the crime syndicates that are being run by Darth Maul. That was basically the concept.
You're right. And Dave took that and put it in Clone Wars. He took some of it. He ain't take all of it, and he put it in Clone Wars.
Right.
And I read something that George still wants to do it. Car, he still wants to do that.
Yeah. There's rumors now.
That he wants to do
it. They're trying to erase 7, 8, and 9, and they're gonna start over. Which is wild.
But I wanted. I know that's crazy, right? Now I wanted to ask something, Kay, about him being on the set. Man, they said that I came across some stuff that he added some details, like serious details, like that he wanted him to be in black, that he wanted it to mirror the Rogue One scene, and that he wanted his movements to mirror Anakin and Darth Vader. That he made that he made those like demands to Favreau and Filoni, and they executed it, and that they ran back their ideas to George. Like from what I'm hearing, I don't know but I hear he's real involved, man. Like he's like the big uncle.
Right.
They're like they run everything past him, and which is which is why you feel the way it feels. You know what I'm saying? Because they wasn't doing that for the last movies, and they wasn't doing that. Running everything past them. I mean, they were checking in on him.
Right.
But you could feel that the Mandalorian seasons has that Star Wars feel because they're running everything past George. Not to say that he's calling shots, but I think what he wants, they're putting in there, definitely.
Right.
I think that one of the,
go ahead, Nate.
I'm sorry, Kahari, but I was just
jump in.
I think that the biggest evidence of that is there's a lot of the fan service that we're getting. Like, there's a lot of stuff that they did not have to give us that, that maybe is, peripherally canon, you know what I mean? And stuff there, like, you get to see it on screen. You're like, all right, now this is a thing. And I was texting you guys the other day about the Dark Troopers from, Star Wars Dark Forces. And that's a game from 1994. You know what I mean? Be able to see them pop up and be like, yo, like, this is really how I felt when I'm on the screen with my joystick trying to run around. Like, cool, man. Like, I really felt like that. You know what I mean? Like, these joints are about to pop out. And, the Ahsoka, just the minor details that you'll find from, like, from some of the cartoons, man. I just feel like it was really just like a love letter to Star Wars fans. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
Everything else that we get is going to be, you know what I mean, in the same in the same vein.
Nah, man, they go back to what you're saying. And I mean, like, my kids, grew up with Clone Wars, you know what I'm saying? And Star Wars Rebels. Like, they watched that's their Clone Wars. That's how they got introduced to Star Wars, is through Clone Wars. So for my daughters to see Ahsoka live was tripped out for them. For them to see Bo-Katan live was like, yo, that's really, oh my goodness. I mean, and it's brilliant marketing too, to bring young kids, Clone Wars heads, Star Wars Rebels heads into, you know what I mean, this phase. So it's like, and to take the 90s heads and to bring the video game heads in, you know what I'm saying? So like you said, it's a big shout out to Star Wars fans throughout just the whole universe, the video game heads, the novel heads, the comic book heads, you know what I mean? Bringing us all together, Some of us, like, I wasn't on the video games. I was on the comic books real hard, you know what I'm saying? I wasn't on the novels, but I'm on the cartoons real hard, whereas Kahari's on the novels, you know what I'm saying? And we all can kind of come together because we all got a piece of it. And this series brought, like, all those pieces together, if that makes sense, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, one of the ill, things is, like I said, when you check out the behind the scenes stuff, Jon Favreau always talks about, like, the deep cuts, you know what I mean? So, the Easter eggs that they throw in there, are not, it's not going to just be like, oh, like, again, like Land Shark, jumps out of a closet and, oh, it's C-3PO, you know what I mean? It's deep cuts. It's the, like you said, it's the statue to the IG unit, you know what I mean? And then just that IG unit, is in, you know what I'm saying, is with the other bounty hunters, in Empire Strikes Back. You know what I'm saying? When it's Bosk and Darth Vader and Boba Fett, you know what I'm saying? In that scene, that IG unit is there chilling. And it was like, oh, let's take that. And it was like, and Filoni was making jokes. It's like, oh, we thought it was so hard because it was just standing there like this because it was bolted to the ground. It had no mechanical equipment. They took the light post in the cantina, and that's his head. Like, if you ever look at the cantina, the light post, you turn it upside down, that's the IG's head.
Wow.
You know what I mean? They were just taking pieces of the set and putting them back together, creating, you know what I mean? So they were taking that from the first movie, took that part of that set apart. They built the IG unit, you know what I mean? They were like, let's use that. Like these deep cuts. So even when you see it, the character's familiar, but then again, you don't even know how familiar the character is. Like, oh, that character was in Empire Strikes Back.
Right.
And they're constantly, doing that again, like I mentioned with the Camtono, with the Beskar, you know what I mean? And the character Will Row Hood, for those, aren't familiar, during Empire Strikes Back, there's a scene where, everything's going to hell in Cloud City, and Lando gets back on their good side, says, look, I know I set you guys up, and I'm gonna get you guys out of here. And there's a brother that comes running through carrying a Hamilton Beach ice cream maker. You know what I'm saying? And if you go to Star Wars Celebration, they have the running of the Will Row Hoods. You know what I mean? There's a whole character based on him. There's a figure. There's an action figure, Will Row Hood. You know what I'm saying? It's a black dude in an orange jumpsuit, and about dozens of cats show up dressed like him, carrying the Hamilton Beach ice cream maker. And then Jon Favreau was like, that same weekend when, that episode ran was the same weekend Rise of Skywalker came out. And he said, well, they're doing Rise of Skywalker. He's like, I'm going to take the deepest cut possible, and we're going to do this Camtono. And then it's funny because on the behind the scenes stuff, they're talking to all the actors and all the artists and stuff. And he's like, you don't know what this even means. And they're all looking like, no, like, you just told us to make it. We made it look cool. He's like, man, this is the Hamilton Beach ice cream maker thing. Like, you know what I mean? Will Row Hood, there's a whole thing behind this that the fans, so they're always, the graffiti. It was actually an artist. They actually commissioned an artist who loves Star Wars who actually did the mural. You know what I'm saying? Wow, it was like, wasn't a different thing. You know what I mean? It was an actual Asian brother from Cali, I think, who's a graffiti artist who loves Star Wars. And they had him do, you know what I'm saying? And then he did everything he did was thought out, where if you look at the mural on the ground, they're all Jawa graffiti because the Jawa can't reach high. You know what I mean? So at the bottom of the mural is all the graffiti that the Jawa did. You know what I'm saying? It's just like that level of, of specificity, you know what I'm saying, and care, for the canon is, obviously what makes it so much different from anything else.
No doubt, man.
Yo, man, that's amazing.
No, man. Can we give a shout out to the poster, yo? That poster, that Boba Fett, the Book of Boba Fett poster. The way you talk about detail, you talk about art. Oh my goodness, that joint is like crazy. And before we go up, man, can we get Moff Gideon back? You know what I'm saying? Can we just get his character back somehow in the Book of Boba Fett or season 3? You know, I just kind of wanted to bring him up as far as that character and him, you know, just being one of the illest Star Wars villains. You know what I'm saying? Like in the Star Wars universe. I just kind of wanted to get that out.
Yeah, no, absolutely, man. I mean, you know, I think, you know, I mean, he had so many lines. I mean, his lines, you know, obviously his lines were getting spit back to him. You know what I'm saying? Like, he was like Biggie. You know what I'm saying? You know, his lines were so ill. You know, but obviously when he called him out, and it's still to this day, the only reason why we know, you know, Mando's name is because of Moff Gideon. You know what I'm saying? Which obviously is a question we said, like, why does he know everything?
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
We know that we know he's intelligence. You know what I'm saying? We know he's Imperial intelligence, so he's like a CIA kind of dude. You know what I mean? But you know what I'm saying? Like, how does he know everything? How does he? You know what I'm saying?
And how did he get the sword? How did he get the dark sword?
You know, yeah, obviously, yeah. How did
Saber,
obviously that? You know what I mean? But like, I love the line. You know, in the final episode, he's like, you know, something. I forget how he exactly says it, but if I know what I know to be true is like, you know, your friends have taken the bridge.
Right.
He's like, like the murderers, the savages they are. They killed everybody. The way you said, like the murderers, savages that they are.
Giancarlo Esposito, man, like, yo, dude is the most underappreciated actor. I'm flipping through Netflix. Better Call Saul came up, and I'm like, man, this dude's been killing these roles. You know what I'm saying?
You know, he goes back. You know, he goes back. Like he was on Broadway when he was 10.
Yeah, man.
You know what I'm saying?
He was in School Days.
You know, he was born in Italy.
Man, he was in School Days. He was in Do the Right Thing. He was bugging out and Do the Right Thing.
Yeah,
School
that was
Days.
his first like major film joint. But he was on Broadway when he was 10.
Before
his
that,
dad is Italian.
Wow.
You know, his dad's Italian. You know what I mean? I always thought that he was from the islands. I thought he was like Dominican or Puerto Rican.
Yeah, he's
actually Italian.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? He's from Italy, actually. You know what I'm saying? His dad's Italian. His mother is African American. Yeah.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? And I forget what his dad used to do. You know what I'm saying? But his dad was somehow involved in entertainment as well. You know what I mean? But he was on Broadway when he was 10.
Yeah, Kahar, you posted something right on the Lando's Palace page, or his interview with him.
No, he did a really dope interview, real quick film short from the Star Wars, you know, Facebook page, where he just talked a little bit about just stepping into the world of Moff Gideon. And it's so interesting is that, you know, because you get the dopest actors and you get the dopest technicians and CGI and everything. You get the best technical people, the best artists, the best performers. And the funniest thing is they step into this universe and it's kind of intimidating because people like me and you know way more about it. You know what I mean, than him. So he said he did his research and basically used Moff Tarkin, you know, as his foundation to really, you know what I mean, get into it because he was down with Peter Cushing. Obviously, he was familiar with the performance. You know what I'm saying? I think he was like 17 when Star Wars first came out. You know what I'm saying? And, you know, he was just breaking it down. And it's interesting because he said the first scene that they shot, you know, actually was that scene at the end, you know, where he calls out their names and he has that whole regalia of stormtroopers. And the interesting thing about that was half of those stormtroopers aren't actors. That's the 501 from California. You know, the 501st Legion, because they ran out of costumes. They ran out of stormtrooper outfits. And Filoni had to call in the 501, and he couldn't tell them what they were doing. He said, we got this really big event in Southern California. And they're used to doing corporate events, like big corporate events where they know they can't talk about where they're going. They just show up in their stormtrooper outfits and act like stormtroopers. Then they get to the set, and the Favreau and Filoni pull them aside and say, hey, this is what's going on.
Right.
The Mandalorian. Like, you might have heard about rumors about this Disney Plus show. Like, this is the Mandalorian. That's Giancarlo Esposito. Like, yo, we're about to get it on. Like, y'all about to run up on people and shoot people. And they said they were moving better than the extras that they hired to but they had more experience being stormtroopers. They said we didn't even have to direct these people. We just had to tell them what was happening. And he's like, and they like, you know what I mean? They were like, and they actually had them do a lot of like the E-Web blaster and all that because they were just more familiar with the material than the extras.
Mm.
You know what I mean? And they interviewed them like on the behind the scenes. They interviewed them, and you know they're like, damn, they're crying and shit. They're like, oh my god, I can't believe that I'm in Star Wars. You know what I mean? Like I'm in Star Wars now. Like you know what I'm saying? Like that's the dream. Like anybody who they manufacture your own stormtrooper outfit with PVC supplies from Home Depot and like bending, like buying a whole bunch of PVC and bending it and shaping it and molding it into a stormtrooper outfit. I mean, obviously, you get an opportunity to be in Star Wars for real. You know what I'm saying? It's gonna blow your mind. You know what I mean?
Not only that, now you are Star Wars canon.
Right. Exactly. Right.
Like now, you know what I'm saying? If we were to be like, yeah, that random stormtrooper who was on that street arrested Mando that one day, you know what I'm saying? Here's their backstory. You know what I'm saying? Here's what happened 8 years after Mando. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're Star Wars canon now. That's
right.
That's lit.
One of the other things Filoni talks about is also then it's like their suits are now film issues. It's like the equivalent of like a game worn jersey. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like so now their suits are official. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like the suits have been rocked. You know what I'm saying? In a Star Wars film. You know, it's like having a game worn jersey. You know what I'm saying?
Seems like that corporate price probably went up a little bit. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah, Northern California.
Bro, it's way iller than having a game worn jersey. It's like
absolutely, yeah.
Soda jersey. You showed up to the game. Michael Jordan was like, "Oh, this is as ill as the jersey I got on right
now." Yeah, like you gotta get in the game, right? You know what I'm saying? No, it's just right. It is like showed up to the game in your jersey and then asking to come on the field and you drop.
Get in.
You drop 15.
Yeah. Key points. Key fourth quarter points. You know what I'm saying? Definitely.
Right. Yeah. So so it's gonna be, very interesting to see, how the Boba Fett and all these other series play out. And, in our final, minutes, I did want to just jump, to the kind of future of Star Wars, this conversation. I know me and Nate has saw some hot takes that we disagreed with, and it's interesting because it's like the people, and it's like me, it's like I'm not the biggest fan of the sequel trilogies. I'm not the biggest fan of the prequel trilogies, but I can sink my teeth into all of it. You know what I mean? So I'm not, I'm not like, I love Rogue One. I think Rogue One's probably my favorite Star Wars movie ever, but it's not at the expense of everything else. You know what I'm saying? I feel like I'm a both and dude. I like parts of all of them. I can watch all of them at any point. You know what I'm saying? I don't have a lot of the hate in my heart, but I feel like people that really, really liked Episode 8, you don't want to really want to hate Episode 16 of The Mandalorian. People that really love The Last Jedi, I feel like it's their job to hate on the closing, particularly the closing minutes, the return of Luke Skywalker, and make this whole thing. It's like you can't do good stuff and serve the fans. I don't understand why that debate, continues to rage. But it was people that felt like it was like taking pride in hating on that episode and like, oh, you guys overhyped it. Like that was whack. It was just nostalgic, vomit, diarrhea of the mouth, of nostalgia, fan service. And I'm like, man, I've had people that don't even get into Star Wars feel like that was the dopest television episode they ever watched of anything, any genre. You know what I'm
saying? Right. Go ahead, Nate. You're on mute.
Yeah, you're on mute.
Episode 8 was not right for The Last Jedi, right?
Yeah. I know. Rise of Skywalker was 9. Last Jedi was 8.
Yeah, that's my daughter's favorite Star Wars movie, right? And interestingly enough, we watched when we watched the episode 16 of Mando. When he came out, she was like, "Yo, like that's Luke Skywalker," because in the Star Wars movie she had seen it have come out in her 9 years. She never seen a Luke Skywalker look and act like that. You know what I'm saying? So like I think that it was really lit for her to be able to see that Luke Skywalker and on film versus, what happened with what in my opinion is kind of like the logical path of Luke, where he's gonna ultimately be old and kind of like disenchanted, disillusioned with everything. But even like before we get to that Luke, people still want to see that other badass Luke. So I thought that they gave it to us, and I feel like, we knew that we were going to get some fan service, right? Like if you were watching this and you don't appreciate some of the fan service, then you might not, you know what I'm saying, this just might not be a thing for you. You know what I'm saying? But like there's so much stuff out there that they're able to deliver to the fans that really makes sense with the canon. That it's like, yo, why wouldn't you do that? If you could put Luke there, if there's 8 other Jedi in the universe and one of them possibly be Luke Skywalker that shows up, why wouldn't you want it to be Luke Skywalker?
Right.
So that's
right. It wasn't done whack. Like, you know what I'm saying? Even people that didn't, like in some of the podcasts I listened to, even people that didn't want it to be Luke was like, yeah, this was not done whack. Like it was so tastefully done. You know what I'm saying? Man. Like from the video, you know what I mean? It wasn't, like I said, it wasn't Land Shark. It wasn't like he just hopped out, you know what I'm saying? You know, hopped out like P. Diddy all up in the video. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It was tastefully done, you know what I'm saying? And he doesn't, you know, reveal himself until minutes after, you know what I mean? It's like they tell you it's him, you know, in such a subtle way where it's like you're still guessing throughout. You're like, I think it's him, but is it? You know what I'm saying? It wasn't so, you know, obvious and contrived, you know what I'm saying?
Man, Kari, that's like somebody saying, you know, Midnight Marauders was uneven. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's had a problem with Midnight Marauders, you know, Tribe Called Quest classic album. It's like you're nitpicking, man. You know what I'm saying? You're nitpicking,
right?
You know,
right?
You
like,
know,
and also, Lukey, on that, using with that specific analogy, for you to be able to nitpick it that much, you're probably a pretty big fan. like I have this conversation with people all the time about hip hop albums, and they'll be like, "Yeah, you know, this album, blah blah, that album," and I'm like, "All right, well, how many times you listen to that album to make that determination?" And you know, most people won't want to be like, "Oh, I only listened to half of it." So people will be like, "Oh, I listened to it like multiple times." I'm like, well, if you listen to it multiple times front to back, it probably ain't that bad. Right. Okay, you know, like Fife's flow on whatever song wasn't on point. If you had that big of an idea about what Fife's flow is supposed to be like, you might, you know what I'm saying, there's probably some things here you appreciate.
Right. Nah, man, I kind of wanted to say, no, you're right, Nate. Nah, I kind of wanted to, because I know from the text, you know, Nate definitely has an affinity for the last 3 movies. You know what I mean? No?
I don't hate him. I don't hate him.
No, I just wanted to say that I think that there was good moments in all those movies. You know what I'm saying? I think that what happened was that they kind of force-fed a lot of things, and there was a lot of uneven things. And I think they were looking more for product than process, right? I think Kathleen Kennedy was looking at the product, how to sell this merchandise, you know what I mean? How to get this product out, and not looking at the process. And I think that's kind of what happened with the movies, and that's kind of what you feel. I think that going through the movies, though, you're like, yo, that's a good moment. Yo, that's a good character. Oh, that's a good line.
Mad dope moments.
Yeah, there's mad dope moments in all 3 of the movies, but they're just so uneven, and they didn't tie in well together. You know, there's some character development problems and what have you. So I think that to wipe them all together, wipe them out, no, you don't wipe them all out. But there is some criticisms that are justifiable for those movies. You know what I mean? And I think the last movie, The Last Jedi, is what made Jon Favreau, what made him come in, you know what I mean? Because he was kind of consulting on all the movies, but what happened at the end of that movie was like made him really say, yo, I need to be up on this piece. I need to be in. So he went to Disney execs, he went to Bob Iger and was like, yo, man, we need to change some things around. Also behind the scenes, man, just reading some things, this Disney Plus app was supposed to drop 5 years ago, okay? Yeah. Disney Plus app was supposed to drop like 4 or 5 years ago, and it was going through a lot of technical problems, what to be on it. If you remember, Disney took all their stuff off of Netflix like about 3 years ago. It took like all their stuff off, right? So you couldn't find their stuff because they were trying to get all their content for this Plus app. Also, Bob Iger is very, very responsible for getting Star Wars to Disney in the first place. Bob Iger just retired, right? Now he's this like legendary figure, executive figure in Hollywood, right? He's the one that really blew up Marvel for Disney, and he got Star Wars and what have you. So he was about to retire, and he didn't want the Star Wars franchise to fold, right? So as his last move, he brought Jon Favreau, he brought them over, and Dave Filoni over as well to kind of head it up and kind of push Kennedy kind of to the side, you know what I mean? As his last move to launch this app. And it was real conscious that they put the Mandalorian on this app to be a part of the launch so it could blow up. You know what I mean? So all of it is like real thoughtful. They're really thinking behind it, how to like unify the Star Wars fan base for this app. You know what I mean? So a lot of it has to do with business. A lot of it has to do with money. And let's not forget that last year, Disney lost a whole lot of money. You know what I'm saying? So not to say that they were broke, you know, they're not, but they definitely wanted to make some of that money back. You know what I mean? With this app.
Yo, Luke, like you just kind of blew my mind a little bit. So I think a big thing that Star Wars and Disney was trying to do when they were closing with the most recent prequel trilogy is that they had too much faith in the like extended universe way things that could connect the canon in the film. So like if you want some of the stuff to make sense, like you had to go read this book. If you didn't read this book, you don't like what the Snoke story doesn't make any sense, right? You know what I'm saying? But I think another thing that they were doing is they were trying to be really creative with it, and they were thinking of different ways that they could make new canon, right? And one of the things they did was they made the Star Wars Galaxy Edge Park down in Florida. Right. I'm willing to bet that they are losing tens of millions of dollars a month that thing.
Right.
They're like, yo, we've done all this stuff for guys to be able to get in and kind of be able to have a hands-on experience with this thing that we're saying is Star Wars canon, the Galaxy Edge. You know what I'm saying? And people can't come here anymore because of coronavirus. I think that hurt a lot of stuff that they're looking to do anything else, man.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think, bringing Filoni, and Favreau, more into the fold. Obviously, Filoni was able to build that relationship with George Lucas. It's that relationship that, that he had with Lucas, and then Favreau, he's just been putting up 50 points a night, for years. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, the Jungle Book, Iron Man, all that stuff that he's been able to do. And it's really culminated, That's why we definitely got to, some point over the winter, really have some episodes where we really break down the behind the scenes stuff, you know what I'm saying? Because the technology, like the volume, the LED screen and a lot of the technology they're using is really a culmination of some of the projects that he's worked on, where he took some of the stuff that he did with Jungle Book, some of the stuff they did with the Lion King, some of the stuff, that they did with Marvel, you see, the Death Troopers and, and the Mandalorians flying around, you can tell that was all stuff that he learned how to do when they did Iron Man. So he's taking all this stuff, and then they added the video game engine background, so he's like, man, I mean, they literally created new technology, just for this show, you know what I'm saying? So, I mean, they're just taking it, and that's but that's Star Wars, you know what I mean? And there's an ill part in the behind the scenes of Robert Rodriguez. He actually, he actually played out. We got Big Phil jumping in for the home stretch. But he his son dressed up in costume, act out the scene in his backyard. And then when he didn't, and then when he ran out of kids to use, he used actual Star Wars action figures. Video, Favreau and Filoni, and they were like, "Yo, man, are those Star Wars action figures?" And he was kind of embarrassed, like, yeah, I didn't have anything else to do, so I just, just use use a green screen and just use the figures. And Favreau was like, yo, that's like the most Star Wars thing ever. You know what I'm saying? Like, let's go there. You know what I mean? And it was just like, again, Big Phil, joining us, like, just to give you a sense, we kind of went over, Mando season 2, talked a little bit about the book of Boba Fett, and we're kind of just, closing the conversation today, just talking about the future of Star Wars. And again, this debate that's kind of gone on since last week's episode, with a lot of critics feeling like it's just too much nostalgia, too much fan service. Why do we have to have a book of Boba Fett? Why do we have to, go back and revisit these characters over and over and over again? And to me, it's kind of almost looking over all these new characters that have been introduced over the last year. You know what I'm saying? Even in The Mandalorian, the vast majority of characters are new. I feel the future of the series is, tasteful, fan service. And obviously the introduction of new characters, but finding that balance. But it has to be, You know, and the last thing I'll say is like, you know, and also it's the deep cuts. It's like, you know, some of the fan services people don't even pick up on it. Like the fan services is Biff Fortana, you know, having the stick. You know what I mean? Because
Right.
you know, Biff Fortana, you know what I mean, never had the stick in the movie. Only the action figure had the stick. You know what I'm saying?
For
And
sure.
it's that little
sure.
stuff, like that's the fan service. And a lot of these critics, they didn't even notice
Whatever
Skywalker
that.
part of it. They're just
Well,
solely focused on the
I
Luke
think that
Skywalker part.
I think some of these people just want to have an issue regardless. So it doesn't matter. Which is fine because you need that makes it for a good story. The big reveal at the end of the last one, anybody that had an issue with that is not a fan, period. So and it's almost like to a point where like their opinion doesn't count, in my particular opinion. You know, when we talk fan service, we're talking for me is when they have little things in there that the casual fan wouldn't know about. And you don't make it a big deal. It's just, oh, that's a ship from some random cartoon, or that's this from that, or that's from that. To me, that's true fan service. Throwing in Luke was something that needed to be done because it was like they fumbled the ball, and you know we only got 10 minutes left. You know we try to get to the Super Bowl, and it's like, oops, you know we're gonna bring it home. It's like you know you gonna have Tom Brady in, and you're not gonna let Tom Brady do Tom Brady at the end of the game. That's bad coaching, you know. So for me, I like the fan service. I feel like Favreau's the right person to have in there because he knows how to do fan service. Do we need a Book of Boba Fett show? No. Do I want one? Yes. And that you know it's a good thing. Who doesn't want to see that? We all want to see that. Ever since he fell to the Sarlacc pit as a kid, we felt like we were cheated on Boba Fett because we never saw Boba Fett be dope, and he was looked upon as being one of the dopest people in Star Wars. So I'm all for the fan service. I you know, the movies are 3 years apart, but they also have so much. They don't take place right after each other. There's so much story that you could tell. There's a whole universe. So yeah, give me all the fan service. We got new characters, but we love the old characters for a certain reason. So, you know, I'm all for it. I'm all for it.
Hey Phil, I'm so glad you just said that. And you know, I be giving you a hard time all the time about the newer movies. But you know, one of the things that I think is so real that what you just said is that the universe is so big. There's 1,000% no reason that Rey had to be Rey Palpatine, right? Like y'all in a whole giant universe, and she just happened to be this dude's granddaughter. Right. You know what I'm saying? Like that was the only way to make this story work for y'all. So I get that, man. Also, but what I wanted to ask y'all was, you know, because I know you guys are some film buffs generally. Where do you guys have Favreau and the great filmmakers of the last, you know, half century, you know, or few decades at least? Like I would say it was probably one of the biggest things that we had going on in film period over the last few years, and he gave us that, like among the many other things that he gave us. So
I'll let somebody else answer because I got a whole spell on that. But go ahead, young Luke.
Okay,
Luke Mon.
Nah, man.
You jump in.
Nah, that's amazing, man. I mean, I think I didn't really start focusing in on him, you know what I mean, until this season, as far as like all he's done and all he's doing to push it forward. I think he gets mad props. I think probably as far as the last 2 decades, he's probably the filmmaker, you know what I mean? If you think about it, what he did with MCU and what he's doing now with Star Wars, I mean, it's incredible. I mean, my respect for him is grown immensely, you know, over the past year, you know what I mean? Just looking into everything he's done, looking at everything, because I didn't even know he did Jungle Book and all those things. I'm just finding that out this year, like, whoa, this cat. And he did voiceovers for Clone Wars. That's how he met Filoni. He was doing some voiceovers for Clone Wars, and they were at the Star Wars ranch, and that's how he met Filoni. So he's known Filoni for like over 10 years. So they've been building behind the scenes, you know what I mean, for 10 years, waiting for this moment.
Yeah, he plays.
Yeah, so they've been building, man. So he's been having some criticism. So they all kind of built for this moment where they are right now, you know.
Yeah, and on the behind the scenes, he talks about how, you know, when they talk about how they did the Darksaber, you know, I mean, he talks about how, you know, he was, you know, he tells them, he's like, my character, you know what I'm saying, on the animated series, had the Darksaber. You know what I'm saying? And then they showed a scene where Darth Maul, kills him. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, he was free Vizsla. That was the illest fight too. That was one of the illest fights.
You know what I'm saying? When he was Vizsla on the, on the animated series. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So like again, it's like tying all that together. And you'll see on the behind the scenes stuff, from season 1. Filoni always talks about how they think it through. It's like they don't just, you know what I mean? They want to do some fan service. They had a homie come in and do the mural, do the statue to the IG-88. You know what I'm saying?
That was one of the greatest,
the deep cut
fan service piece to me was when I went back and I saw that and I said the fact that they did it, it didn't make a difference whether that was in the show or it wasn't. It had nothing to do with the outcome of the show. If you don't know what it is, it's not a big deal. It's the fact that it's there for people to go back and go, oh wow, like it just shows that they're really in tune with what's going on. My fault. Go ahead, brother. You're right. Keep going.
Yeah, no. You was, no, we're in full agreement, man. I mean, I like again, it was interesting to seeing some of the posts, seeing some of the hot takes, really trying to, portray, and to me it was like, really the magic of that scene. Yeah, it was definitely Luke getting busy, but more so than that was like all the emotion between Grogu. You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? And Pedro Pascal, you know what I'm saying? And to think that he's holding a puppet, yo. He's not even holding like a cute, real creature. He's holding a puppet, you know what I mean? And obviously we can't see him. We can't see the the strings and the mechanics that are controlling the movements of the other puppet. It just looks like, it's just a puppet. But at the end of the day, he's talking to a puppet. I mean, the level of acting it takes to like have that emotion, you know what I'm saying? Like it's a little green puppet, you know what I mean? Like it ain't like a real baby where you could really maybe go back to the day where, we could say, I'm gonna go back to the day when I first had my first child, was in the hospital and had the baby in my hand. Right. I guess you could try to do that.
That was that moment. That was that moment for that character.
But it's a puppet, you know what I'm saying? It's a little green puppet, you know what I mean? So yeah, it's like wild, just to hear like the criticism, and then even in some of the criticism, like before you jumped off, so I had mentioned that like part of it to me was like couched in this trying to prop up, episode 8, you know what I'm saying? The Last Jedi was like, yeah, like, because it was so critically acclaimed. And, even to this day, I think Last Jedi is still the most critically acclaimed, Star Wars movie as far as film critics, are concerned. You know what I'm saying? And it becomes the film critics versus the fans thing. And I don't think it has to be that kind of civil war. You know what I mean? Unless people, like you said, people want to make it that, not about.
But I think the problem with that though is that, and I'll say this about Star Wars fans per se, I think we're different than some of the hardcore fans. I think some of the hardcore fans have an issue with things not being presented a certain way, so no matter what, there's going to be an issue. Oh, he wouldn't do this or he wouldn't do that. Now, I do believe there's certain things, for instance, there's just certain things Luke wouldn't do. I don't care who the director is. I don't care the situation is. There's certain things he wouldn't do. There's certain things Leia wouldn't do. Han, on the other hand, you may have a little bit more creative freedom on how he's going to be. And I think like a lot of fans, a lot of these older cats, like they can't step out of the original. For us, we like all of them. We like some more than others. Some have nostalgic reasons. Some are. I was just talking to my brother, my girl, and some other people about when you watch comedies, right? Some comedies don't stand the test of time. Okay, they're based on that particular period, but you still have to be a good movie at the end of the day. If all you have is nostalgia, then there's a problem. I think Favreau knows about. I'm going to make great films.
Yeah.
And I'm going to hit you with the nostalgia.
Yeah.
And he's a fan. You have to be a fan. I mean, I think that's why when he did, you look at the fact with him with the MCU, the way he did Iron Man, his little things he did in Iron Man that just drew people in. And I think, like, for me, like, I was very critical. It's a whole other story, but I was very critical of the Black Panther film. I was very critical of it because I felt like there was too many liberties taken, and it wasn't. As a fan, it for me, I'm watching it like this isn't. To me, it's one of the worst. It's the lower shelf of the MCU movies. I'm just being honest. But when I look at somebody like Favreau, like he's the type of person that I feel like he could take any property that he has his heart into and can make it something crazy. Like, for instance, you were saying Jungle Book. Jungle Book's a great movie. You don't even know that he did it, but you can also tell that he's a fan of the material. So it shows in his work, and it's just, and I feel like I think Star Wars is in great hands. And my segue is, I don't want Patty Jenkins touching this Star Wars film. After watching Wonder Woman 84, I don't want touching it. I do not. Zero.
And that's Rogue Squadron movie, correct?
I have zero interest.
Rogue Squadron.
She's doing Garbage Squadron. She doesn't need to be doing Rogue Squadron.
Yeah. I heard that Wonder Woman, but my kids wasn't feeling that at all. I ain't watching it.
I'll just say this: it was not bad, but we're at the point where we're talking about. So this is why this correlates, right? So the one thing we keep talking about is consistency, right? What's canon, what isn't canon. You can't do something in episode 1 and do something in episode 3 that's totally different than what you did in episode 1. Like, it has to make sense. My biggest issue with the Wonder Woman film was that in one of the Superman versus Batman, Bruce Wayne says to Wonder Woman, "Where have you been all this time since World War II, right? Nobody has seen you." And he was looking for Aquaman, all different characters, right? So he's looking for them, right? So he hasn't seen them. He's the greatest detective in the world. That's his superpower. So if he's looking for it and he can't find information on you, there's nothing readily available. But in Wonder Woman that takes place in 84, this John's in the malls, full outfit, fighting folks. There's a world level event. She fights in the White House, full of cameras, full of surveillance material. There's no way Bruce Wayne has no idea who she is. And he's like, You've been gone since World War II. Nah, Patty Jenkins, you cannot touch this Star Wars stuff. You can't touch it. Could there good.
Nah,
that's what I'm saying, because I don't want it to happen. Like, Luke will have a red lightsaber. Han Solo's vest color will be wrong. The Empire will be in TIE fighters that look like X-wing land speeders. We're not playing them games, man. I don't want to play that.
Nah, I think that I just wanted to say this though. I think that one of the things that, again, I've been saying this since we started this, is storytelling. You can tell Favreau really loves it. The character development. I mean, what made the first movies so great was the storytelling and the character development. You fell in love with the characters. You knew about the characters. And that's what this Mando series is. Star Wars is character development stories with special effects sprinkled on the top. You know what I mean?
Right.
And the last three movies, it was more like, we're going to wow you with special effects. And maybe the character development and the storytelling maybe a little bit, but the special effects, this Han Solo movie, the Millennium Falcon looked nice, yo. You know what I'm saying? But
it did.
The storytelling was a little bit off, right? So I think that as we move forward, they definitely got it right with the storytelling, character development, make you fall in love with the characters and what have you. And I'll say this to end, like, back in the day, man, after Empire Strikes Back, a lot of people don't realize, man, Return of the Jedi, a lot of people were kind of upset with Return of the Jedi. You know what I mean? Back in the day, like, as far as the way it ended, you know what I mean? Like, true hardcore fans, after Empire Strikes Back, had a problem with Return of the Jedi for years, man. So it's always been there, and that's what the first trilogy.
Spielberg was supposed to do it. Like, Steven Spielberg was supposed to do Return of the Jedi. You know what I'm saying?
Right, but he did he did Indiana Jones or something like that.
Well, they were doing Indiana Jones together.
So yeah, right.
But it was because the Directors Guild piece. Because with the Star Wars movies all open with the opening crawl that goes back to harkens back to the days of the serial, cliffhangers. You know what I mean? Right. And in the same way that the animated series start off, where they give you a synopsis, you know what I mean, they set the scene before the movie starts, you know what I mean, to give you some context.
Right.
You know, and that comes from the old serial cliffhangers. But the Directors Guild, if you notice, every other movie you ever watch, the first thing that comes up is the director's name.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a contract that the Directors Guild have with the filmmaker, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
You know, with whatever, you know, parent company that oversees, you know, the film industry, you know, the Motion Pictures Association, I guess. And so the director's name has to go up front. So that's why George Lucas isn't in the Directors Guild, because he had to relinquish his membership so that his movies can always start, you know what I'm saying, with the opening scroll, you know what I'm saying?
Wow, amazing.
You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And that's why Spielberg didn't do Return of the Jedi, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but nah, I mean, the last thing I was going to say, just as far, you know, as deep cuts, you know, again, like, and this is what people don't get about the fan service. Like, you look at, you know, episode 9, the Marshal, you know, the Krayt Dragon. The only time the Krayt Dragon ever appears in the film is at the very beginning of A New Hope, when they're walking through the desert and the bones are in the background.
Mm.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? That's the Krayt Dragon. So now they're pulling stuff, you know what I'm saying? They're pulling that. It's like, that's not Luke Skywalker. You know what I'm saying? They built a whole episode around a character all you ever seen was the bones. You know what I'm saying? And then the Krayt Dragon Pearl, like my brother said, is from the video game.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? From the Old Republic, you know, video game. And they mentioned that on the behind the scenes stuff. So it's like they're pulling, you know, this stuff from so deep, you know, in the Dark Troopers.
Right.
You know, from the video game in '95. You know what I mean? And they're adding a little nuance of, well, this is third generation.
Right.
You know what I mean? They removed the human, which is again a direct, you know what I'm saying? Like, anybody who ever played that video game would get that, like, oh, not only did they take it, they remixed it and added some life to it. You know what I'm saying? You know, this is third generation. They removed the human. You know what I'm saying? It's like, so any, like, you know, like Nate, who had to jump off, you know what I'm saying? He played I never played the video game. So he was super amped when they added that level of specificity. And that's the fan service, not the Luke Skywalker. They're going to do that once a season, once every 2 seasons. You know what I mean? You can't, you know what I mean? That's like going deep to Randy Moss. You can't do that every play.
Right. But when you need it,
right.
Yeah,
you need it.
You throw it up. Throw it up.
We will have them sitting there, baby. We're not going to lose.
Throw it up. Throw it up.
Right.
Throw it up to him.
When the Obi-Wan series come out,
right,
that's gonna be the best. That's gonna be the best thing ever, man. And you know, if they, you know, they're, you know, I just want them. You know, it's very interesting. I just want to see how they get to the point where he's this old, basically wandering bum dude that don't nobody deal with. That you mean old man Juan or Obi, whatever it is. Like, I want to see if they take those 6 episodes and actually stretch it to that particular part. Like, do we do that, or do we give time? Because he's older than Alec Guinness. You know what I mean? He's Alec Guinness is way older than what he was at the particular point in his life. So, do we save that? Like, do we save that for later? You know what I mean? So, I'm hyped to see Hayden Christensen. You know, back. I want to see him in the suit. You know, I want to see him get busy, and and I feel like he always got a bad rap, as an actor. He's not Johnny Depp, but still, I feel like you know, some of that. I'm just excited to see where they go with this. And,
you know what? I don't see how y'all feel, man, but I think the prequels, as they've aged, have gotten better. You know what I mean? Like,
see, I like them.
I like them. Yeah, I like the Attack of the Clones.
I like them from the gate. I like them from the gate.
Revenge of the Sith is hard, yo. Revenge of the Sith, when Darth, that whole thing is hard, man. Turning into Darth Vader,
he got that one right.
Man, he got that one.
I feel like the mistake that was made with the prequels was he didn't do what Favreau and Filoni and these guys are doing, where they're realizing, okay, like, this is Star Wars, this is in the context of a space opera, but this particular story within the context of a space opera is not a space opera.
Right.
You know, and to me, like, Phantom Menace was like the political thriller. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
It was like the Pelican Brief or some shit like that, where it was like all this espionage and subterfuge. You know what I mean? If you just went with that, and like it left out Jar Jar Binks and the comic relief, you know what I'm saying, and some of the other stuff that really got in the way, you know, the story. And in the second one, you know, he decided to make it a romance. You know, he made it about, you know what I mean, Padme and Anakin falling in love, which I would have liked to see more of a war film. that really got into the Clone Wars, which might have been more like the animated series, where you got more context, of that, you know what I mean, as opposed to. But it was a tragedy, Episode 3 was a tragedy. He knew that was a tragedy. He knew, and he knew, I think he had a much better sense of that part of the story. As opposed to the first 2 acts, you know what I mean? He knew what was going to happen. We all knew what was going to happen, which is how was it going to happen. But I think he was able to wrap his head around that better. But I think the difference of now versus back then is he has a Filoni and a Favreau who not only know the material,
right?
You know what I mean, but also have their own chops as filmmakers. Where I don't know if back then somebody could have pulled him aside and said, "Yo, this is kind of whack."
Right.
Whereas now they can say like, "Yo, that's kind of whack." We should do it like this. You know what I'm saying? I don't think anybody in 1999 had the ability to say, "I know the material and I'm a filmmaker." I don't think we should do it like that. I think we should do it like this. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I think the difference was when he decided to step down and let other people do it. Because who's gonna tell George Lucas, man? Listen, like who's gonna have that conversation with George Lucas? Let's keep it a buck. Like you're at a meeting with Lucas, and there's all this stuff. He's made billions of dollars off of a film that nobody wanted to put out. Let's keep it 100. Let's keep it for real. And you got all this stuff, and somebody sit back and says to him, "Well, maybe Mace, you know how quiet the room will get."
Right.
Like there's nobody's going to. I mean, you're just another filmmaker. I think you have that much, respect for him. Like when they were saying, like, where do you put Favreau at? I think Lucas may not be a whose dude who did The Shining? Help me out. Director who did like The Shining and some of them other films. He may not be a Francis Ford Coppola.
Right.
Okay. He may not be Ford Coppola, but he is still in that upper echelon because his characters that he created, his creative mind is something that goes beyond almost anybody in history. I mean, like even to this day, like, we'll sit back and we don't like this or that, but you still talk about it and you conversate about it. Like it's not something, it's nothing has been thrown away. Like he could come out right now and do a Star Wars movie, make it the worst movie ever. 3 years later, he's announced that he's doing another one. The theaters will still be packed. Regardless, regardless if he came out with a Star Wars film right now during COVID, people would go to the fest. People would go. They would have one there. Shit, everybody cosplays at the damn thing, so it wouldn't be an issue in the first place. People would still be there. So, like I said, he's not a for Coppola, but his character development is something that he's made characters that have stood the test of time. It's
my brother said
Star Wars is
Stanley
like
Kubrick.
Stanley Kubrick. I said Stanley Kubrick. My bad. I said Ford Coppola. Well, ain't Ford Coppola or Kubrick. Those two right there. They in the same echelon. That's an elite level of filmmaking. Those particular two. So, but I feel like Lucas is there because of not because of their it's different type of storytelling, it's different type of editing, different type of whatever. But it's just timeless. Everybody knows.
And they're all homies. I mean, there's a great in Building the Empire of Dreams, the original trilogy documentary. There's a great scene where they talk about when Lucas was in the middle, of doing the original Star Wars. He did a sneak preview at his house with like De Palma, Coppola,
they all
Spielberg. You know what I'm saying? And actually, everybody thought it was whack except Steven Spielberg.
Hey.
They all was like, "Yo, this shit's gonna be whack."
Wow.
Spielberg was the only one that was like, "Yo, this might be alright, man." Everybody else was like, "Yo, man." And Francis Ford Coppola and Brian De Palma was like, "Yo, man, like we just did The Godfather. We got all these dope actors. Why are you doing a movie with nobodies? Like this don't make no sense. Like this is gonna be whack. Like this shit ain't gonna work, And he still didn't have the dogfight scenes yet. So he actually took the World War II movie, you know what I'm saying, and spliced it in.
Right.
and he said like this is what it's gonna look like. So in the middle of the movie,
Yes.
So World War II movie, and like the planes, like he's like the starships is gonna look like this. They're all looking at him like, yo,
Yeah,
They
this
like,
is
man, yo,
whack.
they're like, yo, he tripping, yo. They like, he tripping. And
yo, but
they called each
when
other
that
up,
joint
clowning
dropped,
him afterwards.
but when that joint dropped,
Hey.
joint dropped, it was like, yo, it was like, yo,
Hey,
I thought that joint was gonna be whack.
made more paper
They got
than
back
all
up
they
on it.
movies. Made more paper than all they movies.
Right, made more paper than all them. Yep, exactly. Yeah, they got back up on it. Nah, man,
Right.
to go back to what you were saying. Like even when Empire Strikes Back, he had. I looked it up. He had I forgot the name. He had Doris Kasdan, right?
Yeah,
helped write Empire Strikes Back, and that was his man.
He's the man.
That was his man.
Yeah.
So Empire Strikes Back had that feel because he brought in another writer that he respected.
Right.
And I think the prequels, there was nobody around to be like, yo, man, that scene ain't gonna work. Or yo, man, like we need to edit this better. Because I think Attack of the Clones could have worked. The editing was just a little off to me. You know what I'm saying? So there wasn't a
Right.
I like that movie more. I like that movie more than most people do. I like I like that movie a lot more.
It stands the test of time. But I think that there wasn't a Filoni or Favreau to be like, yo, like you said, that he and also that he could kind of be like, yo, these are the dudes. Because you could tell that he kind of respects Favreau and Filoni to give him leeway and they give, you know what I mean? So there wasn't that working relationship he had for the first 3 movies. I think if they were around, we would have a different prequel. You know what I mean?
Right. I know we only got a couple more minutes left because we're getting close to football time, but like my brother Neri just said that Brian De Palma actually wrote the entry crawl. But I know they were all like films, you know what I mean, for like film school homies, and they were all like, in the same, crew, making films, blowing up like in the 70s, you know what I'm saying, after American Graffiti, and all that. I think he might have been the first one to have, a hit, you know what I'm saying, when he dropped American Graffiti.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? But I think the other thing, this is the last thing that I'll say, and then we can go around, with final comments. But I think also, because they talk about, one of the cats who worked at Lucasfilm in post Return of the Jedi, prequels. You know what I'm saying? It's like you're doing Indiana Jones, you're doing special effects for like almost every major film, even stuff that had nothing to do. You know what I mean? Industrial Light and Magic. They was working on Terminator. You know what I mean?
Right.
THX with the sound effects. They was all. You know what I mean? So they were just doing all these movies. You know what I'm saying? And they said that at the end of every year, from the late 80s into the 90s, so like they would have a year in at the Skywalker Ranch, and somebody would always ask, "Yo, you ever gonna do Star Wars again?" Because that's what everybody came to work there for.
Wow.
Like Indiana Jones era, the Phantom Menace, everybody's working there because of Star Wars, but nobody's ever done that stuff in Star Wars. You know what I'm saying?
Wow.
So they said, like in every year, it's like, oh no, I don't think so. And they said in like 96, 97. It's like, oh, you're going to do Star Wars? You're like, well, you know what I mean? And then Kathleen Kennedy talked about, and this is my theory based on what she said, even though she wasn't talking about, why the prequels fell short, but just talking about the process of how the prequels came to be, was that they were doing Indiana Jones, they were doing all these fly movies with all these special effects. And in his head, he's starting to think like, yo, we're getting close to where the special effects really need to be for me to really tell the story about how, Anakin becomes Darth Vader and all that. You know what I'm saying? But I think what happened was it was too much technology. You know what I mean? Because the thing about the green screen is you're in this artificial environment, man, and it's hard to act. Because Paul Weller talked about being in the volume for the Mandalorian. It makes the acting so much easier because everybody's in the environment that you're supposed to be in. We're in a green screen. You're in an empty room with a green screen, and we're all supposed to act like we're scared, like there's a big monster about to eat us.
Right.
And there's 4 of us in a room. So much of almost every scene, particularly in episode 1, so much of that was green screen stuff. With the actors in a green screen room, it's hard to kind of have that chemistry because the environment helps to create the space in which you're acting in. You know what I mean? Like if it was a rainy day, and I feel like in a green room, and we're talking about being in the rain and it's not wet, it's hard to capture that moment.
Well, part of the problem with that first film, Phantom Menace, was that you led up to it and didn't even notice. For me, I felt like for him, that was him showing out with Industrial Lights and Magic. because there's moments in that movie where you didn't need green screens. So he just wanted to show
Right.
that he had those capabilities. So
Right.
I'm gonna stunt on y'all right now. This is just boom, and it's impressive. But the problem
Right.
with that is that I'm not going to give that a pass on that. I will always say this: he's a top echelon director, but that particular editing style is. But the issue was more than the environment. If these dudes were out there on the pasture and everything was live, it would still have the same because of the way he was editing the movie. The way he was directing the movie was he didn't like. For instance, if he would have did the director from Rogue One would have did that movie, it would look totally different or came up totally different because of the way they acted and the way they edited it. He was still using old 1950 wipes. You know the wipes. You look, you're like, oh my God,
Right.
watch out. Then it's like come on, man,
Right,
what
right,
doing?
right, right,
You know,
right.
and it was like soap opera stuff. You'd have a conversation and would stop and look up at the store. Like he was still using those techniques, and that's what takes you out of that realm. But that's also part of the charm of those movies as well, if that makes
Right.
sense.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
No, and I think it's also important to note that he didn't edit. You know what I mean? A New Hope.
Oh, for sure.
His ex-wife, and now his ex-wife. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
his first wife was an editor. She edited it. It was her because he did a version and it was whack. And her and another cat actually they took the film, they chopped it all up into little ass pieces, and they pieced that joint back together. You know what I mean? So it was like a whole collaborative, process. You know what I'm saying? And so like I think he needed a team because he's the ideas guy. In the creative room. He's the guy that's gonna come up with the big 30,000-foot view. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And then you have like the Lawrence Kasdan,
Right.
and dig in. You know what I mean?
Right.
You know what I mean? Obviously the first song was ill, but it was kind of like as y'all know, as artists, musicians, artists, hip hop. A lot of times your first album is your best album because it took your whole life to write it, and now you turn around and you only got a year to write your next album. A lot of times, that's why my second and third albums don't be like, because me as an MC, you know what I mean? I still got rhymes, you know what I mean? For 30 years, I haven't put out. I could put all that into one album.
Fire.
That album was fire, but it might take me another 30 years to write those 12 songs again.
Well,
that's the problem you run into.
Since we on that, man, when we gonna get the new B tree?
Oh man, go ahead, man. Go ahead, man. That made me.
Them was classic. Them was nice. No, man, come on, man. Come on, man. I still got my B tree.
Spoken word at its finest, man. We may do a little something.
Them joints was high.
Like shout out to Queef.
We might need to do a Star Wars hip hop.
A Star Wars one, yeah, man. To do Star Wars. Yo. What you think of that Busta Rhymes album, Big Phil? What you think of that joint? I'm meaning to ask you.
Unreal.
Huh? Unreal. I so. My fault, Corey. I just had
No. Yeah, I know Akil actually down. He's a big Star Wars cat. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, man. We need to get him on, man. Been talking to him, man. We need to get him on as a guest, man. Definitely, man. Shout outs to Achilles soon. My other man, Keyway Lubna too. Keyway Lubna, grown folks.
Yeah. Dave Barr for Perry High. My brother Anere. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, man. So yeah.
And
so I'm
Corey. Hey, Corey, I didn't know Nere was your brother till like years ago. I had no idea.
Well, yeah. It was a decent little age gap. You know what I mean? A lot of people think we're a lot closer. You know what I mean? But he got me by like 6 years. You know what I'm saying? So, at them ages, you know what I'm saying? Like when y'all was like 17, 18, 19, I was only like 12.
Oh yeah, we wasn't messing with you, man. Take your little brother home, man.
Hey man, and there he's the real Jedi, man. He's the real Jedi of the family, man. He's the real Jedi. Kahari's the Padawan, you know what I'm saying? Really,
right.
You know what
I'm saying? Nah, he's a super comic book head, man. He was the one, you know what I'm saying? Like the crazy comic book collection, the Marvel Secret Wars. That's how I got all down with that stuff. You know what I'm saying? For sure. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to him. You know what I mean? So yeah. So Phil, since you jumped on late, I'm gonna give you the last word, man. You know what I mean? For next Sunday.
I'm just ready for all the new stuff that we have coming up, man. I'm just, I apologize for jumping on late into this. I'm like, oh man, I need to jump on real quick, and I just want to say, I appreciate you giving us the opportunity to have this platform and have these conversations. So
That's what's up.
it's just dope.
Oh man. Yeah,
And
yeah.
I
So
just
yeah,
got to
so
eat
we're
breakfast
gonna
too, man. So I'm trying not to,
yeah, no, it's
make sure I
I
ain't
know
got
it's the holidays. Yeah,
no
happy
bacon on
holidays
my
to
beard.
everybody, you know what I mean? Happy holidays
Yes,
to
sir.
everybody, whatever you celebrate, you know what I'm saying? Enjoy that, you know what I mean?
Second day of
Revel,
Kwanzaa.
the
Coochie
second day of
Chakalia.
Kwanzaa.
Yep.
You know
Right,
what I'm saying?
right.
You got self-determination? Self-determination?
Self-determination today. Yep. Yes, sir.
Yep. Yeah, I got my canary in the other room, you know what I'm saying?
I see Phil got the tree up. You put the tree up today? You put the tree up this year? A lot of cats
Boy,
ain't you had to.
what you mean? I don't understand not doing that. I gotta do that.
Word.
My kids will
Yeah,
have
we got the
will
tree up over
rebel.
there as well.
Nah, man, definitely, man. We thank Kahari, man, for Lando's Palace, man, for jumping up on here, man. You know what I mean? Like, original shout to Billy D. Williams, the original character, the original Lando
Right.
Calrissian. That's something I wanted to add, too. Like, they just put Billy D up in there. They didn't say, oh, we need a black Lando Calrissian. No, they just say, yo, we're just going to get Billy D. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
It didn't feel like forced diversity. It just felt like
Oh,
natural.
hey, listen. So listen, we need to have that conversation.
Hey, man, that's
Right.
the next.
I'm gonna tell you something. It may be controversial, man, but I'm not for forced diversity in characters, changing colors and characters. Let's do this, let's do that. I believe source material should be we shouldn't be forcing material. Like you said, Lando fit because it was Billy D was a superstar. It didn't matter. You could have had John Travolta in it. It didn't matter. It was just at no point did it ever come into play that Lando was black. You were just like, oh, that's Billy D. Williams. Colt
Billy D.
45.
Colt 45. Yeah, right.
Every time.
Hey, Kohari, maybe we can get into that next time. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. We'll get into that. And also like, I think, talk about, it's kind of tough to just talk about, Billy D. Williams, but then also, bring up James Earl Jones, you know what I'm saying?
Oh, man.
And the role that he played, you know what I mean?
Oh my goodness, right.
Listen, let me say this. And I'm done because you shouldn't have brought that up. You shouldn't have brought it up. I'm saying I don't care. Everybody can't fight. So here's the thing. This year we have so much going on, right? Right? And there was a situation where there were black cartoon characters or whatever that were voiced by Caucasian individuals, right? And people was like, well, they shouldn't be doing these voiceovers because they're not black and they shouldn't be doing this and doing all this. The greatest villain of all time is a white character voiced by a black man.
Right.
There was no issue with that. There was never an issue. There wasn't a.
That's a great point.
We can't have him do it.
David,
I said to somebody, but David Prowse don't sound like what. So my issue was, I said to people, at no point, I said you have to be very careful with saying you can't voice this character and you can't voice this character because it's go both ways. So what if now George Lucas and them say, you know what? We can't have James Earl Jones do that voice. We're gonna change the voice.
Right.
It would be a problem. There's not one Star Wars fan. Like we all love David Prowse for playing whatever. We all are hating criticism. But when we hear James Earl Jones, doesn't matter what movie it is, whether it's Conan, when he was Thulsa Doom with the good hair, or Coming to America, or any old black exploitation, Claudio, all the old movies. First thing we hear is Darth Vader.
Right.
It's not a racial conversation, but if we did, if that came out today, if Kylo Ren's voice was voiced by Andre Crouch, whatever. Oh Lord have mercy. Oh how we represent, man. Come on, man. Let's just keep it. It wasn't an issue. We didn't even look at it. We didn't even look at it like we didn't have to take kids out.
It was celebrated.
But it was celebrated, but it was never a point where we were like it wasn't cover of Jack and all that type of stuff. But we didn't load up the whole church van to go see Star Wars because the black dude's doing the voice of the white dude and he's killing white. Like it's just crazy where we at right. I'm done.
Right.
I'm done, let's just go on, man. We done. That's next week, man.
Right.
I need the synopsis, brother Corey.
That's a good
Yeah,
point.
yeah, yeah.
That's a great point.
Yeah, now we're gonna
Voiceover is
get
just
on that.
acting.
Right.
It's just acting.
Right. No, absolutely. We talked about that earlier. You know what I mean? And we'll definitely be sure to get into it. Next week I did want to mention my brother did point out that actually Glenn Turman, the actor Glenn Turman almost was cast as Han Solo.
Whoa.
You know what I mean? Yeah, yeah. But you also know George Lucas, is married to an African American woman.
Yep.
His wife. I've done tons of philanthropy. You know what I mean? In the Chicago area. You know what I'm saying? They're currently have and we're gonna have to make a field trip. Once the pandemic's over. Once it's done, it was going to be in Chicago, but it's actually going to be in LA, the Lucas Museum for the narrative art.
So we need to go.
They call it. I think it's going to be done. I think this year.
Mm.
I think this year. And it's not just they call it the Star Wars Museum, but it's not just going to be about Star Wars. It's going to be about basically it's going to be a museum dedicated to the art of storytelling. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? But obviously it's going to have a huge, Star Wars presence. But that's what I think it's going to be out in LA or it's going to be out in Cali. But there was a lot of confusion. It was going to be in Chicago, but some activists got together and it was supposed to be on the lakefront. You know what I'm saying? In Chicago near Soldier Field, and somehow it didn't work out. Politics got in the way.
Speaking of Black characters, there's a rumor that Mace Windu's coming back. I'm just going to end with that. There's a rumor that that they're going to delve into Mace Windu prequels,
right?
And that they're going to get into Mace Windu now. You know what I'm saying? And that Samuel Jackson is going to play the older version of Mace Windu. And then they're going to do a backstory of Mace Windu, and they're supposed to tie that in.
As long as Mace Windu's not on Wakanda, I'm good.
And right, and they're supposed to tie that into a Ahsoka series somehow. So that's kind of what we're hearing. Yeah, kind of what I heard. So we'll see.
Okay,
that'll be ill, yo. Mace Windu's planet is like basically Africa, yo, and they're all
like I said.
It's like Wakanda.
Like I said, if they do it, they do it now. So listen, I know our time is up. You have to be careful in the way you first my whole thing. Don't force a thing. Don't force a thing. That's my whole thing. They haven't forced nothing yet. When you force something like the one film where they didn't want to make Luke do this and we're gonna change this. Don't break that formula. The one thing you don't want to do is that everybody has there's a commonality between the fans, the characters, and whatever. And it's that if we get to the point where we're sitting there like, man, you know what? We about to do it like this because the Jedi's from Windu spot, they the fastest, they the strongest, they the this. Like if we do all of this and they don't even mess with the other Jedi, like if we do that, it's a problem. You don't have to do that. There's a way of doing it, acknowledging who he is, and just going on. So that's just my thing. We could, we've had dope African American characters in the Star Wars series where it wasn't, it wasn't an issue. Like they're just dope characters.
Yeah,
right. Now that's definitely what we're shooting for. Right. Yeah, I think that's a great way to end it. Like we're gonna keep it dope. We're gonna do the same thing. Here at Lando's Palace. So, until next Sunday at 11, signing off for Big Phil, Lukman Abdul Salam, and Nate Broaddus. This is Kahari Mosley. As they say in Lando's Palace in Cloud City, McClunky, Dang Remit, and all that fly stuff.
All that fly stuff. Peace, y'all.
May
the force be with you.